Hello everyone, hope you're having a wonderful day, and today guys we're going to be going over my status explosion build for Remnant 2. So if you like bulldozing your way through Apocalypse difficulty, this is going to be the build for you. This build will also be utilizing the Ritualist and the Summoner classes. Both Ritualist and Summoner have gone through some balance changes. Summoner we need to talk a little bit about, but both these two classes I thought work really well together with the new changes that have been brought with the new patch. Now recently Remnant 2 did have an update which saw loads of balance changes being brought into the game, as well as loads of bugs being brought into the game as well. But the main star of the update was the fact that crossplay has been enabled. So now you and your friends can all play together regardless of what platform you're on. That is a massive W. And then the other star of the show was the fact that they added 5 new corrupted weapons into the game, and it is also part of the new corrupted event, which is going for like 6 days I think, from the 29th of February to the 5th of March. So make sure you jump on there. There are a lot more aberrations are definitely spawning, and you're going to be able to get a lot more corrupted shard to get those corrupted weapons. So why should you use this build? Well, for starters, this is going to be one of the laziest builds I've ever put together. You don't really have to do much besides shoot out your mods, maybe use a skill and just watch everything die. So if you're someone that's into doing minimal effort with maximum reward, I got you covered. Now we do have really good sustained damage. Now what do I mean by sustained damage? Well, we're not doing like 7, 8, 9k crits or 7, 8, 9k DPS in total for that matter, but what we are doing is we're doing about 3 to 3.5k DPS, but this is all the time. As long as your enemies are in your mods, they're getting affected by your skills, you got a lot of damage going on with really you having to do nothing at all except hit a couple of buttons. We have fantastic survivability, especially being Summoner. We have the regrowth trait. We can also use blood pact, so the summons take some of our damage. And also this personally for me has to be one of the best exploring build I've ever tried or ever put together. There might be some other better ones out there, but the Ritualist Prime perk pairing up with the new Eruption, or the changes that Eruption has gone through, is absolutely insane. You have some ridiculous AoE, you're able to hit enemies through walls and now also apply fire status effect on them. So if you want to see enemies and actually fight enemies, this might not be the build for you to use. Now moving on over to the gear and traits guys, like I said, we're taking Ritualist and we're also taking Summoner. For the skills we are using Eruption. Eruption just recently got updated. It now counts as its explosive damage. I don't know why it didn't. It literally says twice on the actual skill card itself that it does explosion radius, yet it didn't count as explosion damage. So now it definitely does, and that's something we need to talk about. Eruption now is kind of insane for just clearing out enemies without you even seeing them. So you could be in a room, you can use Eruption, it could hit the enemies in the room next to you or above you, and now it's going to apply fire status effects. So not only does it just do the initial damage, it applies a pretty chunky fire status effect on them, and it's going to kill most adds. Like, you're not going to see many enemies when you use Eruption now, especially if you're using Detonation Trigger. It's kind of nuts. It's probably going to be used, I can see this being used as like a farming method, like how people are using Spectral Blade. You can't use that anymore, so maybe people are going to move over to Eruption. I feel like you probably could do through the wall farming with Eruption now. And then for Summoner, we're just using the minion flies. I feel like they're probably the best summons that Summoner has available to it. Very strong, and with all the with the setup that we are taking, they do hit quite hard. I am actually surprised about how hard you can get the flying summoners to actually hit for. So one of the main things we do need to talk about Summoner is that in the recent patch, its Dominator passive perk got changed. So previously it was just modern skill damage. Now they've added explosive damage. So this is the first class to have 3 damage types on its damage like passive. So now you're going to be getting 35% increased damage to explosive damage, as well as a nice 5% increase to explosive crit chance. Now I think it was confirmed by the devs that Summoner will double dip on skills and mods that scale with explosive damage. So Summoner is going to be the GOAT for all your explosive builds, which is why Eruption does so much damage now. And this also gives a nice boost to things like Tremor and the Helix mod. Now I do apologize guys, I have to explain a little bit more, boring you guys to death over there, but I still just wanted to let you guys know that information for anyone that didn't know, or maybe you've already forgotten. So moving on over to the armor, I do have the Zealot's hat, I do have the Void Carapace, I do have the Fey Royal Greaves, and then I also have the Void Wrap. I've just mainly put this on just to, you know, have some drip, just to look cool. I'm not really got the best armor. It could be higher. I could put more in the strong back, but this is just what I've gone with. I wanted to put some other points into some other traits instead of just having everything in the strong back like I always do. Now for my relic, we are using the Ruined Heart. Now the main reason we're using the Ruined Heart is just to give us some more mod power back, because we're not using Archon, and I would like to try and get our mod back as quickly as possible, because that is our main source of damage. I wouldn't even worry about the health regeneration. 5 health per second is kind of lame, but yeah, 500 mod over 10 seconds, awesome. The upgrades I have slotted in, I've got increased elemental damage, increase to mod damage, also an increase to mod and skill cast speed. You could put skill cooldown here, but because we're mainly only using eruption, that's the main skill that we're trying to use as much as possible, it does have a really short cooldown, so an extra 10% off 24 seconds is only 2.4 seconds. You don't really shave that much time off, so I've just decided to go with more mod and skill cast speed, just like flows a little bit better. Moving on over to the weapons. Now, a weapon that I'm sure you guys probably seen in just about nearly every single build is because this gun is just so strong, and that is the Sparkfire Shotgun. You can easily tell this gun was designed for Ritualists. So the Sparkfire Shotgun is going to apply fire damage, which is going to be really good because that is going to help synergize with some other things we have in the build to give us more damage. We are using Tremor for our mod. Tremor synergizes really good with Detonation Trigger. If you guys, for anyone that didn't know, Tremor does account as explosive damage, and as it starts shockwaving, it will start setting the enemies on fire because of Detonation Trigger. Very, very cool synergy, and that is the reason why we are using Tremor, on top of the fact that Tremor is really, really strong mod. It's a very, very strong mod. I have got Twisting Wounds as our mutator. The main reason I've got this here is to give us an extra status effect. I want to try and get as many status effects out on the target as possible, because that is going to make Eruption do the most amount of damage as possible. We can get 4 status effects on the target. That's 400% extra damage, and you can get Eruption to hit for nearly 5k. Also, Twisting Wounds is of course going to make your Sparkfire Shotgun a little bit stronger, but that is not the main reason we are using it. We want to try and get that bleed and the fire dot out as quickly as possible. Now next up we have the Krellax. Now the main reason we want to use Krellax is so we can apply the shock status effect, and then also you want to use your Krellax as much as possible, or at least every 10 seconds, so you can apply the Stormbringer buff. When you get this to level 10, charge melee attacks are going to lower enemies resistant to all status damage by 10%. To abbreviate that, your status effects are going to be dealing 10% more damage because you're lowering their resistance. So because we can apply one of every status effect, I didn't go with Tainted Blade. I felt like Stormbringer was probably a really good option to have because we get that 10% status effect damage increase. Now last but not least, our handgun, we have the Nebula. Now I do know that a Corrupted Nebula has just been added into the game, but it definitely has a different niche. I think you have to build into it a little bit differently. I still think that this Nebula is better for just about everything. The other Corrupted Nebula can do some insane damage, like it does the most amount of damage I think I've ever seen a gun do in this game. But I still think this Nebula is just a little bit better, and it did receive a buff as well. The Nano Swarms before the patch wouldn't apply a corrosive effect. After the patch, now they do apply a corrosive effect, which I think is very, very strong. All status effect builds just got a massive buff, especially if you're using the Nebula. And I've also put the Maelstrom Mutator on here because we are trying to apply every status effect. Now the Nebula's elemental damage is going to get boosted by 40%, which is just going to turn your Nano Swarms into like a bunch of frenzy piranhas that are just going to seek out anything and just dissolve them in seconds. It is really cool that the Maelstrom Mutator actually synergizes with your mod, and it is even cooler to see how strong you can make your Nano Swarm. So now the Nebula can actually apply 2 corrosive status effects, one with the Nano Swarm, one with the Nebula gun itself, which I think is really strong. So now we got corrosive, we got shock, we got fire and bleed. Tremor can also apply fire, and Eruption can also apply fire. So all we need to do is just apply as many status effects as we can, and then we're trying to upkeep them as long as possible with Eruption. Eruption, if it kills an enemy, it's just going to spread those status effects to more enemies. Now moving on over to the amulets and the rings. Just quickly going to go through this. We have the Detonation Trigger. This is going to increase our explosive damage by 25%, and also now explosives apply a burn status effect. This is a really strong amulet, and now it's become even stronger. because of this update. We have the Singed Ring. This is going to give us a 10% increase to any enemy suffering from a burn status effect, which is all the time, so we're always going to have this 10% damage increase. We have the Stone of Malevolence. It's going to be really good to get us our mod power back. They did fix this. It does work how it's supposed to work now. I'm not sure what exactly was going on with it, but you can definitely tell you're not getting as much mod power. Hence why I've gone for the Ruined Heart to get us more mod power, and then also using Maelstrom to also generate a bit more mod power, because Stone of Malevolence just doesn't do it all on its own anymore, but it is still a really strong ring. The next ring I have is the Burden of Destroyer. Now, I do not have it, but if you have the Ahane's Crystal, which I'm working on getting, I'm 100% going to go through Yasha on Hardcore to get that ring because of how strong it is. If you do have the Ahane's Crystal, it's going to instantly just be 10 times better than the Burden of Destroyer. I've only got this here because I don't have that ring, but I have got the Burden of Destroyer here just to give us a 15% increase to all damage, which is great because we are doing so much different sources of damage. And then last but not least, Probability Cord to increase our crit damage by 30%. I feel like this is really strong because it's going to increase Tremors damage a lot, Eruption damage, and then also your Nano Swarmed, if they crit, they are also going to do more damage. Now moving on over to the traits, guys, I have maxed out Fortify. I have put 3 points into Strong Back just so I can wear what I'm wearing. I've maxed out Vigor. I put 7 points into Endurance. I put 1 point into Spirit. I've maxed out Expertise, maxed out Amplitude, maxed out Bark Skin, maxed out Blood Bond as well. We have 6 points into Weapon Handling just to help with the shotgun, so it's not like kicking around like a bloody madman. And then we also have 10 points in the Siphoner to give us even more survivability. Siphoner, Blood Bond, Bark Skin, and Regrowth, the Summoner's trait card. All these things together are going to give you really good survivability. If you're dying, it's because you're probably not dodging properly. So that is basically it for this build video, guys. Hopefully this build did help you out. If there's anything you think I could do to improve this build, please let me know in the comment section below. I do not fear constructive criticism. I actually try to promote it because any constructive criticism is just going to help me get better at making build videos or just videos in general. Like I said, I had a lot of fun putting this build together, and I highly recommend you guys try it out and see how quick you can just blitz through dungeons with this. It is just insanely fast. Your Ritualist Prime perk with Eruption now is disgusting. It is disgusting. I'm telling you, people are going to probably start farming through walls with Eruption and Detonation Trigger now. I don't think it's good as Spectral Blade, but it goes further than Spectral Blade, so I don't know. I haven't got all the corrupted weapons yet, but when I do, I would like to maybe try and put some more builds together with the new corrupted weapons, if it is possible. Appreciate all the love and support as always, guys, and until next time, stay safe, peace out.